Hi, Sagittarius. Welcome to your February 2021 Astro Update. It's Raina here. So, some of you know that I'm a Sagittarian, a proud Sagittarian. And when I do these types of forecasts, I'm not even thinking about myself. I'm just doing it. It just becomes one of those things that you do. And I was starting to think about all of this Aquarius energy in February and what house it's going to play out for Sagittarius. Oh, and this is for Sun and Rising signs in Sag. And this is the third house. Now, the third house is the house of Gemini, which is the opposite sign of Sag. So there's a connection between Sagittarius and Gemini. These are complementary signs. And even though they oppose one another, there are certain things that Sag and Gemini have in common, although they manifested in different ways. And both of these houses, the third house of Gemini, the ninth house of Sag, are mental houses. So the mind, the dissemination of information, and the taking in of information is very much a part of these two houses. So with the third house, it's more of mundane knowledge. So we include the media with this when we talk about the quote unquote news of the day, what is happening. And so anybody who works in that kind of a field, like a journalist or in that field, you could be like a copyright editor or something like that. That hits that area, but also it's connected to the lower levels of the educational system. So whereas the ninth house is, the university level, and we can even say like wisdom because it's part of the God house, the ninth house. The third house is like the elementary school. Interestingly, I've heard that training, like getting some kind of certification, was part of the ninth house. I would put it more on the third house level because it's about attaining skills. And I believe the third house is connected to a person's business affairs. I'm not quite sure. I just read that the other day. But definitely something to do with communication, and the internet can definitely play into that. So that gets me to a very important point here. As the month begins, we have a Mercury retrograde happening in Aquarius in this third house, the house that it rules. So if you have a website, you may be like reviewing it, redoing it, and it is actually a good time for that kind of thing that you've already created. If you've written a book or anything like that, editing is a great thing to do during this time, where you are going over old stuff. The third house is also siblings, extended family members like aunts and uncles and cousins. When Mercury is retrograding through a house where we can talk about certain people being there, there can be misunderstandings between people. Misunderstandings don't have to be a major thing, but they can create a bit of delay, a bit of maybe stuck energy, things that have to be resolved. And that is, that doesn't mean that there's going to be some kind of a major problem, but Mercury retrograde in any house can lead to information not being received in the way that you intended. And so therefore you have to be as clear as possible, be as thorough as possible if you're dealing with any kind of written materials, contracts, so on and so forth. And the sun, of course, is in this house as well at the beginning of the month, but also Jupiter and Saturn. So for Sagittarius, This is really asking of you to write, to do something where you are, or, if it's another form of communication that speaks to you, even like YouTube could technically fall into this area. Aquarius is a sign that's associated with technology in and of itself. So in the third house, it's a done deal. And some people don't see the value of it until they try it out, and then they realize that that's the way to go, where they're kind of trying to market their services and finding that way to do that, because you have to, also have an audience to be able to do that. That's the thing. But if there was ever a time, this could be it. And I'm not saying necessarily at the beginning of the month that this is going to go as smoothly, but towards the end of the month, it can still be a possibility, because I'm talking about specifically with the Jupiter and the Saturn placements here. So on the very first day of the month, Venus goes into Aquarius. Venus can indicate financial gain because Venus rules the second house of earned income. So there's a money association with Venus, and that might indicate that you're making a profit off of speaking or writing. This can indicate harmony with siblings, or an aunt and uncle give you some dough, who knows, something positive with that. And on the 11th, also this is good for just the way that you speak. You speak and you have a charming way about you, and people are more willing to listen to you and cooperate with you because of that. On the 11th, there is a new moon here, 23 degrees of Aquarius. So some kind of new projects with a communication theme or an education theme. This is also the house that is connected to your local area, also your neighbors. So maybe you get new neighbors, and maybe that's significant for you in some way. Perhaps they'll become friends of yours. On the 18th, the sun goes into Pisces, and this is another mutable sign, this time ahead of you, and that means the fourth house of home and family, one of the angular houses. So this is considered, an important area of life, and the sun going into this area can make you start to really turn your attention to domestic affairs. On the 20th, Mercury goes direct in Aquarius, in that third house. So you resolve something that is connected to what I have mentioned. So maybe there was a falling out with neighbors, a misunderstanding. When I say falling out, I should say a misunderstanding that may, in some cases, create tension, but these things get resolved when people are able to communicate better or more directly. On the 25th, Venus goes into Pisces, so Venus enters that area that is connected to domestic affairs. I'm heartbroken that the fourth house seems to be connected to the father. It makes no sense to me. I'm going to say financial gain through the mother, maybe the father, if that relates to you. Family of origin. Now, if you're a Sag who has had any kind of estrangement from family members, maybe your siblings and your parents, this may be the time in February where that turns around for you, because you have Venus in both of these areas. And I should note at this point that this is a general reading. Hopefully people get that this is not going to, the timing of these different transits will not be universal for everybody. Well, that's redundant, isn't it? So anyway, you could be like redoing something in your home, like painting a room or getting new furniture, sprucing things up, something that beautifies your home. On the 27th, we have a full moon at 8 degrees of Virgo. So another mutable sign that is featured here. And this is in the opposite direction. So it's in the 10th house of career. Now, in this particular case, because it's at 8 degrees of Virgo, if your sun is between 0 and 8 degrees of Sag, this will likely fall in that 8th house, but for others it will fall in the 10th house, but for others it will fall in the 9th house. Many others, because it is at an earlier degree of Virgo. For those that it falls in the 10th house, this can be a time of recognition in some way. So your career, you could get a promotion as a result of that. Maybe you're retiring. I know that sounds like the exact opposite of what I just said, but full moons can bring things to a closure, ending. So that could be for some Sages. I mean, every Sag isn't at the same stage of life, obviously. So something along those lines, or just changing professions, feeling that you've done all you can in your current profession. And then for others, this is in the 9th house, and this can have a more spiritual connotation. Maybe you are realizing that your philosophy of life is something that doesn't work for you anymore, and you need to alter it, or you have a spiritual download that kind of pushes you in a certain direction as it pertains to your spiritual purpose, your purpose in life. I mean, it could have a very it could give you important information. Also, some of you may be ending a trip abroad, or finalizing plans for a trip that you're going to take. So, one thing that's important to note is that it looks to me like after the 20th, when Mercury goes direct, we have once again this green light period. Now, Mercury will still be in its shadow for a little bit. So some people feel that even when Mercury is direct at the very beginning, until it goes to the degree it was when it retrograded, that it still is weakened, and it will have a tendency to muck things up. So it depends on how far you take these kinds of situations. But we can say that from the 20th onwards, that all the planets are direct again. And I was looking at March, and it looks like that's good for March as well. So with this little interlude of a Mercury retrograde, dominating the first 3 weeks of the month, then it's all systems go again. So especially for March Sag. And so I'm looking forward to it. I hope that you are. And have a great month. If you would like a private reading, I'm primarily an astrologer. I do tarot readings privately too, though. But check me out at rainandmoonastrology.com. The link is below. Take care. Bye.